Hello and welcome back to another episode of That Which Binds Us. I'm here with Jack, our co-host.
As always, hello.
And today we have our first guest, my sister-in-law, Ellie Goobin Kriwiel. How are you doing, Ellie?
I'm good. I'm glad you put my maiden name in there.
How do you feel when we call you by your maiden name? You're in my phone still as Ellie G.
Yeah, well, you have a sister named Ellie.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So
Yeah.
I feel like it's a necessary disclaimer.
Yeah.
And all the younger siblings grew up calling me Ellie Goobin.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like
It is
Ellie G.
It's a good name. You know?
It is.
Yeah.
It is. So I'm very comfortable with it, with the maiden name.
Well, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for coming in.
I'm big fans of you both. Thrilled to be.
Thank you.
That's what they always say on podcasts.
Like big fans? You
yeah,
listen to every
big
single
fans.
one?
Yeah.
Well, today's topic is one of my favorite things, another favorite thing in the world, but it's nostalgia. And when I think of nostalgia, I think you understand nostalgia better than a lot of people because you have a great memory and you're really good at telling stories.
Thank you.
And so I just knew, I was like, if anyone would love to just bask in nostalgia with me, I knew it'd be Ellie.
Yeah.
So
It's true.
yeah, I knew you had to be on.
Can we start? What's with the great memory? Why do you have such a great memory? How long have you had a great memory?
So Ted and I have talked about this a lot because it's really hard to argue with someone who remembers everything. And I mean, I think it's actually tied to the storytelling thing because growing up, my family's just like a storytelling family. And I'm the youngest grandchild. And I remember internalizing from a really early age, okay, if I want to say something when everyone's around, I have to be able to tell a story about something that happened or something someone did. So I remember I also read Anne Frank at a really formative time, when I was really young. And I remember keeping a diary from when I was 10 years old, which that was just cataloging my day. But something about that, I feel like that, and then my family situation, I just couldn't help it. I just kind of internalize everything and remember it and file it away for future parties.
So how early are your earliest memories?
I have a clear memory from when I'm 4. But then after that, kindergarten, grade school, and then I feel like middle school,
That's basically everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That's really, it does make you the perfect guest to talk about nostalgia.
Yeah. Because when I think of nostalgia, I think of there's so many different vehicles for nostalgia. There's music is probably my most prominent thing when I think of nostalgia. But there's also movies and foods and
video
smells.
games. We just talked
video games.
A whole
video
episode
games
about video games last week.
are a huge one for me. So yeah, do you have a certain one that is most prominent to you? What vehicle for nostalgia?
It's storytelling. Because, and so Ted and I've talked about this because you don't realize that your family's weird in something until you start dating someone and spending time with their family. And really early on, Ted was like, your family just sits around and talks and tells stories.
Yeah.
And your immediate family at least didn't do that. Nana did that.
Yeah.
Your extended family, but I think it's 2 parts. My grandpa was in World War II, and the way he processed his trauma of that and growing up in the Great Depression was talking about it.
Oh, really? So, talking about it. He didn't talk about other stories. He talked about the trauma.
He talked about everything, but he, that was a lot of people, when they go to war, they don't want to talk about it ever again. And he told stories about everything. And the History Channel came and interviewed him at my aunt's house. I remember I have a video that's 4 hours long. That's just him talking about being overseas.
Oh my God.
During the occupation and stuff like that. And so he grew up, and as the center of the family, we would all just kind of gravitate to that. And then the second thing was we always went camping in the summer. And there's no Wi-Fi, phone service.
Yeah.
And when you're sitting around a fire, you just naturally start to tell stories Or like there's nothing, what else are you going to do? Like
Right.
you kind of naturally start remembering. And Teddy joked because the first time he came to Wyoming with us, he was like, you guys, he was like, you're almost on this vacation just to make more stories to tell on your next vacation. Because it almost became like a thing of like, that was what like we would sit around and do. And like you were almost aware of creating content for like next year's stories.
Do you notice that in the moment, or when he said that, were you like, yeah, that is true? Or has that ever been a cognitive thing for you and your family? Like, we love telling stories. That's like, we love making memories to tell more stories.
No, I definitely, that resonated when he said that. And I also think there's like an awareness of like, if something terrible is happening, being like, oh, this will make a funny story later. Because the ones, like the stories we've told over and over again are the ones where something totally ridiculous happens.
Yeah.
And like those are like Goobin lore. Like everyone knows them even if they weren't there because something went wrong or whatever. And so yeah, when he said that resonated, and since then I've also kind of become aware of it. But then there's like my middle brother is like the funniest person I've ever met. So for me there was also an element of like, I will be negatively portrayed in this story unless I can turn it first.
Yeah.
And so there was like, when something's happening, it's like, I have to make this funnier than Jason's going to tell us, otherwise I'm going to look like an idiot.
Is there ever an element of like, whoever tells the story first controls what the story is? Okay.
Yeah.
Because if he tells the story and you're played negatively, it doesn't matter if that's the truth, but that's the story that was told. So that's the story that will be told.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, and then it's just kind of funny because, Ted was like, this is crazy. Like, this is just not what my family does. No. And that's like all my family does. And even, it doesn't have to be in the mountains. Like, even kind of that silence that starts after everyone's like eaten, but is still sitting around the table. We just start telling stories usually.
That's such a moment. I've never thought about the silence after everybody's finish eating and at a table, but that is the time to tell stories.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, it's also, my grandpa was the youngest grandchild and I'm the youngest grandchild. And so I grew up hearing about people that had died only through stories. And so I think there's also maybe like a morbid aspect of like, someday this is all we're going to have to like remember each other by.
Yeah.
And so a desire to sort of like hold on to what's happening. Like Ted just went to a funeral on Tuesday, and a lot of funerals are just people telling stories about the person who died. Because how else do you explain
how
it?
else do you,
Right.
Like a picture's not going to do it. A video, not really. It's like stories you tell. That's how you remember things.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
When I think of like some of our family, I should probably, just to orient the audience, Ted, who she keeps talking about, is George and my oldest brother, which of course Ellie married Ted. So she came in at, I would say, very formative like times in me and George's lives.
Sorry to get you off, but I remember saying this to Teddy once. I was like, I actually don't have any memories of you before you met Ellie, because you guys met in like when I was 8 years
About
old,
the time
around
you
that
started
range.
making memories.
Yeah. So like
we met when you were 4.
Oh my god.
Like I remember you being little, running around.
Okay, that makes total sense.
Yeah,
and
'cause you guys
then
met
we were
early high school.
dating when you were 8. Like is
Wow.
when we started.
So it's like, it's not out of the realm of possibility to say you have more memories of me than Teddy does. Like,
yeah, or joined at least. Yeah.
Exactly. So when I think of just memories and nostalgia, you are like, it just, you're the clearest example.
Well, and I think something that adds to that, and kind of like Ted had said, is we didn't do that. We didn't talk about stories or experiences. So then when you come along, all of the best memories I can think of are told by you.
Right.
Or times where something has happened and then you've been the one who's like, this is the story. And then the next time we all hang out, you're the one to tell the story.
And like going back to what you were saying about how when you have a negative experience, turning it into a story that's fun. We don't really do that. We were just like, that experience sucked. Let's never do that again.
Don't talk about it ever.
Don't talk about it. Let's just hope it's better next time and change nothing.
Yeah.
And so you started adding this element of like, no, like we can kind of poke fun at that random thing we did, or it wasn't perfect, but like now it's a fun story. And that was just so new to me.
Yeah. It helped like lower the stakes of those moments that I could laugh at it. Like the first time I was really able to like laugh at myself without the dread of like, oh no, I'm embarrassed.
Right.
People are looking at me, but like, oh, like that was funny. I was kind of like, what I think of is I walked around saying poop stain all the time.
It was poop sauce.
Poop sauce? That's even worse. But I remember the first time you told me that was a memory you had of me, I was mortified. It was like, I'm the worst person that has ever existed for saying that. That is such a disgusting, twerpy little thing to say in middle school. And I said it again consistently enough for my oldest brother's girlfriend to have known about it and to understood it.
Well, it ties into video games because that's like, I just remember you rolling around on the carpet playing video games like poop sauce. Like,
this is a perfect episode to come after last week. Because last week, George and I talked about our time playing video games and how we
And only the good things.
we didn't mention poop sauce.
What about, did Macy what did she throw at your face that hit the TV? Was it a Wii controller?
It was a shoe.
Oh, it was a shoe. You guys were playing the Wii though. Yeah.
And we were playing, and she got mad at me, and she grabbed a shoe and chucked it at me, and I ducked.
Did it destroy the TV?
And it destroyed the TV. Yeah.
Well,
and she had the balls to blame me for ducking. She had the balls.
Well, and like it destroyed half the TV was completely blacked out, which stopped no one from watching it. Like I remember walking into the den and being like, "Why is half of Hannah Montana on?" And they were like, "Macy broke the TV." I was like, "You guys are still watching it though."
You asked why we were watching it, not why the TV's broken.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you have any other questions?
Well, I wanted to talk more about like that like part of nostalgia, that ability to like turn a bad thing into like a memory that's now like something that's positive. And like that podcast I sent you guys, one thing that was really interesting is they did a survey of these like cyclists, and they had them surveyed before the race. It was more like a trail thing they were all doing, and they were like voluntarily doing this fun thing. So they were giving surveys all throughout the process, like the before, during, and after. And before, everyone was like, I'm pumped, I'm excited. Their like satisfactory score was really high on these surveys. And then during, it was its lowest. It was like, because they were tired, they didn't have enough water, their like shoes were wet, like all these different things. Like in the moment, it was the lowest. And then after, it was like kind of what we're talking about, the like, that was such a great experience. Like, yeah, it was hard, but it was so fun. Like, I'm glad I did it, like all this stuff. And so it's so interesting to think about it in that perspective of like, we're able to turn a previous memory into something that's good. And when we're looking forward to something, it's really good. And then the like during can be kind of shitty, but we can like escape that by going to the future or past. Like, it's just really interesting, this survey they did.
I think I listened to part of that, and it reminded me, I've always think about this phrase because I read it in a book it wasn't a parenting book. It was more just like the experience of having children. And the line was, the experiencing self is different than the remembering self. Because she was saying it in the context of like, if anyone accurately remembered what childbirth and having a newborn was like, no one would procreate after one kid.
It's like evolutionary.
Interesting. Interesting.
But she said you just can't like, you can't help it. You like look back on like the baby days and you don't remember like the bad stuff as strongly, and you have just like a visceral connection to the good stuff, and it makes you remember it different than the experience was. Which really resonated with me because like when you have a baby, everyone's like, enjoy every minute, and you're like, what are you talking about? Like this is hell.
There is
in
no
some
minute
way
to enjoy.
But like I mean, people that have been out of parenthood, especially for like 20 years, are just like, oh, I would give anything for just like another day or another night or something. And because it probably is like partly evolutionary, like because otherwise we would never do hard things.
We wouldn't have people.
Right.
And how do you feel now? You're pregnant and you've had 2 kids. How does that? Being aware of it, does it change something, or are you still like? Are you thinking this labor is not going to be nearly as bad, or it's not as bad as I remember, or are you aware that this is going to be as bad as it?
No, I remember. Like that's part of the memory thing. Yeah, I remember a lot of stuff. Like I just never. People were always like, not always, but like I've never had more than just like 1 or 2 beers because I hate throwing up. And I like viscerally know what it's like to throw up. I can't, if there's like a risk benefit thing of like either possibly getting sick or just like getting sick enough to like throw up, I'm like, I'm not doing it. Like nothing is worth it. I remember bad stuff also quite viscerally.
Really? Okay.
But I mean, again, there's always the comfort that you can make a good story out of it. So I guess that's an upside.
What's that like for you, Jack? Do you have that ability? How does it compare to Ellie's of like a bad experience? Can you spin it into a positive memory for storytelling? What is that like?
I don't know.
I might know some of the answer, but I'm just curious.
I think no. First and foremost, no. I experience a lot more dread about memories than happiness. I remember I was reminiscing with 2 of our brothers that we haven't mentioned yet. 2 of our older brothers, Adam and Toby. I was just out grabbing beers with them, and we kind of just all reminisced on high school and how hard high school is, and how like you just like everything sucks, and you don't know yourself, and also everyone around you doesn't know themselves, but you think everybody knows everything, and you're the only one who doesn't. So like I was talking about a memory. I was actually talking about improv. And how I felt on stage when I had that panic attack and couldn't say anything. It reminded me back to a point in my freshman year. It was like Spirit Week where I was standing on stage. It was just, I was like the quote unquote class leader. I was this class president, and we had to do an air band skit. And I get so shaky talking about this story because of how embarrassed I am. I told Adam, Adam was there. Adam's 2 years older than me. And he had said something to me afterwards about it. And so I just have always assumed that he remembers this as vividly as I do. So I was bringing up, I was like, you remember we did this song and we were on stage.
Was it bad or something?
It was bad. We bombed in front of the whole student body. We bombed. It was bad. It was a 4-minute song that it was a little racist too. We were a little not super aware of what we were doing, but it was like, let's do like a funny black song and have the one black girl stand up in front and like dance to it. Like that would be funny. But like it's a 4-minute long song, and the joke, whatever joke that was to begin with, is not a very funny joke and can't last for 4 minutes. So she goes up, she's dancing, the song is playing. We're all just like behind her, like cheering for her. The song just keeps going. I don't know where we thought it was supposed to go, but the song keeps going. She's dancing. I'm like, this was my idea, and I suck. No. So I'm like, all right, now everybody dance. And then we all started dancing to this song, and like, it's bad, and it keeps going. It just never ends, and I'm like begging for it to stop. I'm just mortified because I'm a freshman, have no idea what I'm doing. And then Adam afterwards goes, if you would have just like chilled out and had a little more fun, it wouldn't have been as awkward as you made it. And I internalized that so heavily, like, you made it worse than it was.
Oh, no.
You dumbass. So I remember that so vividly, but also so negatively. Like, it gives me a lot of anxiety to think about because I assume everybody remembers that.
But so did Adam not remember this when you were reminiscing?
Adam didn't remember. I was reminiscing, and I was like, you remember the song, right? And he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And I was like, you said something to me afterwards. Like, you have to remember. And he's like, I said something? What did I say? And then I said that, and he's like, I'm so sorry I said that. But I don't remember saying that. And I just, like, it has lived with me for so long. Honestly, unspoken. I haven't told that story until talking to Adam a couple of weeks ago. And now I'm like, oh, it actually wasn't that bad. I can see it through the perspective of being a high school kid. I was 14. I was desperate to impress people and, whatever. It doesn't matter. Yeah. But yeah, so I think of dreadful stories. I wish I was able to laugh at that, and I think I kind of am now. I wouldn't have told it if I'm not able to laugh at it a little bit now. But I think there's a lot that I'm still a little too insecure to laugh at just yet, to make it funny. And I think it's because I haven't had the help of like growing up like you have, Ellie, where you're able to make those things into stories. Like if I had the mind or the self-awareness to make that into a funny story, I would have gotten over that really quick. Cause like, oh, this really funny, embarrassing thing. Like, I'm not above making fun of myself, but that felt different. That felt dreadful.
Yeah.
So yeah, my experience with memories like that, like bad memories, typically only exist in the bad bucket.
Yeah.
Unless I've done some work or I've processed it later and somebody's like, that's not that big of a deal. Then I can laugh at it. But until then, it only exists in my head as like, you're dumb and that was bad and you should feel bad about yourself. So yeah, I don't know. What about you?
It's hard, kind of like what you were saying, like looking at life through that perspective of now it will be a memory. And so how do I want to remember this is really hard. I've never really done that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cause you want to spin it positively in the future. So I think I do have a like pretty solid memory, and I think I have a lot of good childhood memories, mainly because I had really good older brothers. And like, I think that's something that like my older brothers didn't have older brothers that provided so many good memories. So I do have a lot of really good stuff that I can like bask in and relish. But yeah, negative experiences, it's hard because I don't look to tell stories. I'm not looking at it through that lens.
Yeah. I think there's a sense of like just awareness. Every time I've had an experience, I am not thinking of the future because this is all that has happened. So this is the only thing happening. So like when I was there, it wasn't like, oh, in 5 years this will make a story. When I'm on stage, it's like, I want to kill myself. This is the worst thing that's ever happened to me. I'm thinking more past up to the present, not present into the future. So I think that might be like, I think that could be the disconnect, is like you were kind of trained and brought up to think towards the future, and we were just like making it through this moment just to get out of this moment.
I sort of wondered too, like what birth order has to do with it, because like George is saying he like loves nostalgia, and I was the youngest grandkid in, like, obviously the youngest child, but the age gap was huge. So my brothers are 11 and 8 years older than me.
Oh, wow.
So by the time I was 11, the house was empty. And so I was like nostalgic for family Christmas as a 6th grader.
Yeah.
Like, man, it's different now. Like the guys never come home for Christmas. Like I'm like looking out the windows, it snows. Like, you know, like I'm like
listening to the saddest song you can find. Yeah.
Because I remember, I feel like that really influenced Ted and I's relationship, because I was like, you get to be like part of these memories. Like you're gonna probably be the first one that leaves, and like these kids are only gonna be little for a little bit. So like things like, I remember we used to spend the night at your guys' house.
We
on
remember
Christmas
that
Eve.
too. That was a big deal to us.
Right? Because we were.
hella
I was
fun.
like, this is just gonna last. Like I think as the oldest, you think, well, it's just gonna last until I move out, and then it ends. But like, especially with like big age gaps, I'm like, yeah, but your younger siblings might only be 8.
Yeah.
So like you only have like 8 years of like Christmas memories, sort of. And so like that was, we would spend the night on Christmas Eve and like play Monopoly and stuff, because like, and it was just interesting, we came from totally different perspectives, where it wasn't even my family and I was like, we gotta hold on to this and like make some memories, and you know. And Ted was like, it just like never would have occurred to me, because he basically was out of the house by the time we started dating. He was 18. He had moved out, but I mean, like, he wasn't married or anything, and so it felt different. But like, I do wonder if like younger siblings are more drawn to like remembering things with like rose-colored glasses.
Yeah.
It just changes sort of when like the older ones start to move off.
Yeah, there's like a connectedness you feel to the
right.
family that like is ripped from you in a sense. Whereas when you're the oldest, it's all on your terms.
Right.
You get to decide
Yeah.
when you leave.
And I think there's just something like comforting about people telling you stories about when you were younger. Like, I think about this with my kids because, like, you don't remember the first 5 years of your life.
Yeah.
So in some ways, you're relying on other people to tell you who you were.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah, that's interesting.
it makes you dependent on your older siblings or like your aunts or uncles in like a different way than I think if you're the oldest and like then you're like the oldest sibling and there's certain memories, but like you remember those. It's not like someone's telling you a part of your life you don't remember.
So now that you are a parent who, like, if you were worried about us, like me growing up, creating good memories for me, how does that now affect the kids you do have and this nostalgia they're going to feel as they grow up? Like, are you very present and active and like, we're going to do this so that you feel a good memory about this? Or like, how does it affect your now parenting?
I try to be like, something I started each time I was pregnant was like a journal for each kid, just to like tell stories about this is like how you act now, or like this is what you're really into, or
which journaling, that's something never in our family encouraged. Don't reflect.
Yeah, we never did that.
Still, no, waste of time.
Yeah,
like journaling, that's a really good way to just be like, yeah, life is good, or like I want to remember this thing.
It's so embarrassing to look back on. Like, Ted has to burn them if I die first because they're just so. But I mean,
Wait, your childhood journals?
Yeah, I mean, I bet I have like 30 journals just filled
like
with
book journals, like.
Yeah, well, like the first are lock and key diaries where I would keep the key. Which again, I was the only child in my house at that point, so I don't know who's like reading my diary. But
I hid stuff from mom and dad in my I wrote a journal in like 8th grade, and like I would tuck that shit away. Yeah, nobody was finding that. So I get it. Even though I wasn't afraid my brothers or sisters would find it, but like, I was hiding stuff from my parents.
Just feels, like this is my
Yes,
these are
mine.
my private thoughts.
Yeah.
Right.
Which it's funny, like I'd be curious to like if someone's analyzed how like social media has changed that. But yeah, like journaling, it's so embarrassing, some of the stuff I wrote, but I mean, it's really fun to look back on too. Like high school, there's so much stuff about Ted before we were dating.
That's so funny. Did Ted know that? Were you into him, or were you just like?
No, I was like, I'm going to marry him when I was like 14, but really? I played like a long game.
How did you know? Why? How? Why?
I don't know.
Huh.
Yeah, I don't know.
Do you remember feeling those things?
I remember the very first moment we met.
Really?
Yeah. And because we were playing kickball, and it's like embarrassing partly because I was from CCA, which like was the feeder school at a freshman party. So I know most of the people there. And Ted is from VCA.
Oh, yeah.
So
yeah.
He knows no one.
You should say VCA is a tiny homeschool co-op that had like 18 students.
In El Dorado.
K through 8, 18 students.
And this is a school for a high school in which, so Ted knows no one. And like, theoretically, I should be the one like seeking out new people. But that just was like not my vibe.
Yeah.
Then I was very insecure. So we were in line for kickball. And I just remember him kind of standing next to me and being like, your name's Ellie, right? And I was like, yes. But I didn't look at him. I just kind of kept my eyes. I remember thinking, okay, he's like, oh, cool. My name's Teddy. I have a sister named Ellie. And I was like, that's nice. And then it was my turn. But later I was like, oh, that guy's really special. And then
wait, all you said was that's nice. And then
and then it was my turn and I like didn't see him. And I remember there were like whispers about, because there's always like a big deal who the new kids are, you know. So I remember there being whispers about. So I'm not gonna say at that moment I knew, but it was so embarrassing and also cute. The night of our rehearsal dinner, Dad told me, my parents never let on that they knew any of this. Dad told me he was taking out the trash when I was like a sophomore, and he said your trash was just full of he said your trash is just full of these pieces of paper that was like Mrs. Ellie Kriwiel. But which was so embarrassing, but then I also respected that my dad just like sat on it for like 8 years. Like he never was like, Like when we started dating, he wasn't like, oh, so
Yeah,
this
I
is
know this thing about you that would make you hate yourself.
It probably hit a little too close to home.
Yeah,
and
right.
If you brought that up too soon, like
Yeah,
that can
yeah.
only be remembered at a rehearsal
Right.
today.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're in shambles.
And he didn't announce it because I would have still, but he like just told it to me
Oh,
privately.
that's super
And
sweet.
I was
Oh, wow.
like,
That's really sweet.
this is mortifying, but I appreciate the way you handled it. But yeah, there's all sorts
funny.
of embarrassing stuff in there. Like, and in middle school, I had like, there's a full diagram of the lockers, and I'm like, I'm right here, and Abby's right here, and like, I don't know, there's someone separating us, but I think we can still like, and like, I mean, it's so stupid, but it's also really.
Their memories about like the way your brain works,
Uh-huh.
not just
Yeah.
like things that were happening, but like things that were important to you.
Right. Well, and I think about it with my kids because I'm like, someday I hope I can look back on these because like the smallest stuff felt like the biggest deal in the world. And it's so tempting to just be like, get over it. Like you're in middle school. And I'm
Yeah.
like, I literally thought this was life or death
Yeah.
to the point where I have a diagram of
Yeah.
the locker
Yeah.
assignments.
Yeah, that's something that I've noticed about your guys' parenting style. I definitely hear Teddy say it a lot, but whenever Lewis or one of them is having some emotional breakdown, he's like, "It's really hard to be 4, isn't it?" And he just really like.
But it's not like condescending.
It's not
like
condescending.
True, like
It's like-
this is hard for you. I'm aware that it's hard for
Yeah,
you.
yeah, because if you're smart enough at that age, you know, like, yeah, this toy like that my brother stole, like it's not that big a deal, but like you feel like it's a big deal. So even just acknowledging that, like, yeah, you feel like that is important.
And you're allowed to feel like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've really noticed that with your guys' parenting style, and it's really cool.
Yeah.
It's interesting with kids the way, and it's funny that you guys say that about journaling because when Ted and I were friends, he noticed like I was always in our friend group, I would tell stories. And like he noticed, he was like, you remember everything. And he was like, how do you do that? And I was like, well, I journal a lot and like I write. And so he has a journal that he started like our senior year where he's like, this is a journal to help me remember. Cause I literally remember nothing from like 2 days ago. And I have this friend who's able to just like drop details
That's
like
what his
it's
journal
nothing.
says?
Yeah.
That's so funny.
Because he was like, I don't remember stuff. He was like, how do you do it? And I was like, I don't know. I mean, part of it is I journal, I guess. And so he started journaling.
Just because of that.
Uh-huh.
Has his memory gotten any better?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
Does-
it's, yeah.
Does he still journal? I know he like writes.
He
every once in a
does.
while.
It's like different. It's different. He's more like Twitter. Like he'll have like a thought and
Okay,
write it
yeah.
down.
That's interesting.
Yeah. But yeah, he journals. And I think having kids was one reason he was like, I need to remember this stuff.
Yeah.
And so he writes like a lot about kind of funny things they'll do or stuff like that. But yeah, it's funny that you guys both talked about not journaling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
It's
he
so
noticed
hard.
that. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
It's so hard because I don't know why I'm doing it. Like, it's not tangible enough for me to continue doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. My journaling back then was like basically a prayer book. It was like I was journaling to God, I think. But now if I journal, it's more just like really abstract thoughts where it's like I feel like I'm sitting in Jello right now, and it's like I don't know. That just felt right to say. So I'll write that down. That's all my notes have is just like a bunch of random thoughts where it's like, today I'm a cloud. Okay, moving on. That's it. That's all I got. And then sometimes I'll make it into music that I write. But
Right, I was going to ask
sometimes
if
I
it goes
won't.
into your
yeah,
lyrics.
every once in a while. Sometimes there'll be one that I write that's like haunting is the right word. Like it'll hit me, and I'm like, I can't forget that. Like I think that's gonna stick with me for a long time. Like that's I decided recently that I'm going to finish my second album this year. And I'm gonna do it. And the title for it hit me. That's what like started.
Okay.
And it's like I have to write this
Yeah.
down. And now I like want to write a song.
Yeah.
Title that has the title, because it's just like really cool to have an abstract thought that hits. Because yeah, I don't know. My feelings feel more abstract than like the word sad or
Right.
the word lonely. But like, no, I don't feel lonely. I feel like I'm floating in a vat of Jello. That's what it feels like. So that's kind of like the journaling I'll do, but it doesn't at all help me with memories. It just helps me with feelings. Kind of helps me articulate feelings. So that's also way different. Like I don't have a good memory, and I don't like remember things much at all, but I remember like feelings of certain moments. Like, oh, that moment, like with my therapist, I'll do a lot of like, we'll go through memory, and I don't remember what happened, but it doesn't really matter what happened, but like how I felt in that moment. And like, how do you feel now thinking, like if you're in that moment, you're 12 years old, what are you experiencing right now? And it's never the memory. It's always like the sense that I have. So I've tried to be better at writing about that, but yeah, it's weird. It's like kind of a weird flavor of it.
I think it's sort of funny because I also feel like I can occasionally start to err too much on the side of like, how will I write about this? Like as it's happening. Because, and like I read something one time that made me laugh so hard because it just hit a little too close where, and this was like several years ago, but I've never forgotten it. I don't even know who to credit, but is this girl, and she had been in a wedding. She's like wearing this dress, and she had her hair in like a flower crown, and she walked in on her boyfriend was like in bed with her best friend or something. And like awful, she ran, and I think she's a photographer. She ran into the bathroom and just like fully clothed, turned on the shower, and was just like sobbing. But she has on this dress, and she's like, I can't believe I'm admitting this, but I had this thought where I was like, this would make a great scene in a film. Because like her hair is like braided, and she's like, so one part of her is sort of like completely despondent, and then the other one's like, wow, this is really aesthetically like beautiful right now. Yeah. I have to file this away because I might want to recreate it someday. So like that's probably like the flip side where you can almost err too much on the side of
you're
like,
thinking more towards how is this a memory rather than just experiencing
yes, just experiencing it. Right, exactly.
That I feel like I've noticed helps me sometimes like ground me in something that feels really shitty of just like this will be a memory. This isn't gonna be my forever.
Right.
Interesting. Yeah.
Which can go down the darker side of like disassociating or not taking your present moment head on. But it can, I feel like, help if I have like a mindful moment of like, I'm just here and this is really aesthetic or however I experience the moment. Yeah. It can be kind of helpful sometimes.
Yeah.
So something that we did for the first time in our episode, in our last episode, is a little game that we're going to start playing every episode. So I don't know if you've thought any about your question for this time, but
okay. You should go first.
We'll hit it with the jingle. There's going to be a jingle there at some point. Yeah. How do you like the jingle, Ellie?
I love it.
Oh, great. Good. So this game is called Trauma or Drama.
Ooh.
George, can you explain the game?
All right. We're going to ask you a question. Well, it'll be for the table. It's not just you.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how you will answer it is whether it's trauma or drama. And trauma is how you answer the question. Is it based on your environment and how you grew up? Is the way you feel about the answer to your question based on your environment and the trauma or just the experiences you had? Or is it drama in that it's you as a person and your personality? It's not the experiences you had.
Which
so that's where drama comes from.
I've taken it, and I don't even know if I'm playing right whenever I answer. But yeah, I take it more as like, is this something? Do I relate to this because of my trauma, or do I relate to this because it's the way I want to relate to this? Like, if I'm my wholest person, am I doing this the way I want to be doing it?
We were just talking about this last night, which is why I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have to remember my this podcast I listened to about that. Okay. But I'm ready.
Great. George, if you have one, I'll spend a little time thinking of mine.
Okay. I was really hoping you were going to go first.
Okay, I just don't want to steal yours if you have it, but I'll go
No,
first.
You should.
Okay. Let's go vacation memories. You're on vacation and you're making memories, or you remember back to vacations that you've had. do you relate to those memories, or do you relate to the act of making memories on vacation specifically in a way that feels like it comes from trauma, or in a way that feels like, no, this is right. This is the way I want to be relating to vacation memories.
This is hard.
It's also a game that definitely puts people right on the spot. So we gave you a microphone, gave you some headphones, and then asked you a question and made you think. So
It sort of feels inherent to my personality. So I guess that might be drama.
Memories in general.
Or like making,
Yeah.
And on
Yeah.
vacation.
Yeah.
Because I also feel like, because I've leaned, and it's not just like the Kriwiels, a lot of people have been like, your memory is so good.
Uh-huh.
And so I think sometimes I fall into being like, so it's my duty to
Yeah.
remember.
Yeah.
This will forever be forgotten.
Yes.
If not for
Yes.
me.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
You're the
And
savior
so,
of the vacation.
but I mean, it's really hard to remember a time when I wasn't like doing that. Just kind of like cataloging things. Like I have like 10 stories from Kalamazoo that have come up since we've been talking. Like,
That's for some reason that trip alone is like memory after memory after memory. But it is Kalamazoo. Nobody thinks about Kalamazoo.
well, yeah, and that's the funny part is it's not the trip itself.
Yeah.
It's like leading up to it. It's like the drive.
Yeah, we as a giant family all got in one van and drove to Kalamazoo.
I think
Well,
we had a separate
yeah.
car, and everybody
Oh.
was desperate to be in the second
You
car.
and Ellie were in there a lot with us because
Yeah.
it was me, Toby, Mariah, and Ted.
Uh-huh.
We're like, and then there was there was a third row. I think it was your dad's car.
Yeah.
But I
And
remember
somehow, I don't know how I got in there, but
you and Ellie were in there a lot. But yeah, there was like a revolving thing. Why are you laughing?
because Mariah had an iPad.
Oh, yeah.
we were like, I
Oh
want to
my
go in that car
God.
because I want to play with Mariah's iPad because we never got to play with something like that.
I thought you were laughing because Adam just on principle refused because Kelly couldn't come. Like and so he's like, I'm not in the couple's car. Like he was determined to ride it out.
that does make sense that I ended up in that car then. I couldn't
Yeah.
figure out why Adam wouldn't have been there, but I do know that he was pissed that his high school girlfriend couldn't come on this trip.
Yeah.
I wonder how he feels about it now.
I bet he still is a little pissed about it.
Like I remember a lot
This was
about
like
the drive up.
2011, by the way.
Yeah.
This is like over like 15 years.
And we
ago,
went
it
to
feels like.
Kalamazoo, Michigan. We drove to Kalamazoo, Michigan.
Yeah.
The thing that I remember setting the tone for the trip is I think Ted was driving and I was in the passenger, and I think Mariah fell asleep right away, and we maybe made it like 20 minutes out of town before we had to stop at like some random truck stop, and then it never takes like everyone just floods out of the car. Like one of you immediately got a football. We're like on this grassy field for like half an hour. Everyone's already digging into the cooler. And I remember I was like, are we in Kansas City? And I was like, no, Macy threw up. We're 20 minutes outside of El Dorado. Like it's definitely not been 3.5 hours. And then that just like set the tone for like the snail's pace at which we continued for the rest of the trip. But I've thought of so many Kalamazoo memories since we've been talking about this. But and then the ski trip that we took,
Yeah.
which
That was so good.
yeah. I have a lot of memories of that one too. But yeah, I've been thinking a lot about those. Like 1,000 things have come up since we've been talking about it. I want to say it's drama.
Yeah.
Partly because I kind of like remembering things. So I'm like, I don't know if I want to
I
say
don't
it's
wanna-
trauma.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you
Sounds
remember things
healthy.
even more than your family. Like your family tells stories, and that's like the environment you grew up in.
Right.
But it still seems unique to you,
It's,
from what I get.
I feel like it's how I first started to like make a niche for myself.
Yeah.
Like, because I read Anne Lamont's like one of my favorite authors, and she talked about this, and I was like, oh my gosh, I resonate with that, because she said she wasn't popular in high school. She wasn't like really attractive. She wasn't a good athlete. She wasn't in plays, or she didn't have a good singing voice, but she noticed at some point like the popular kids were inviting her places. And she was like, what is this? And then she said, I think her line is, they invited me to parties on Friday and then wanted me to tell everyone what had happened the next day when we were hanging out.
Interesting.
Like, she created a role for herself. Like, and she was sort of saying, it doesn't matter, like, who you are. Like, if you can tell the story about what happened to the group of people to whom it happened, they'll want you around.
Yeah.
And so, like, that's also, it was subconscious, but I think as the first in-law, I was like, I will be the storyteller and I will endear this family.
Needed it.
Well,
We needed
because
a storyteller.
especially how positively you tell the stories.
Yeah.
Like even the like poop sauce story of you as a kid, there's no ounce of judgment.
There's no real butt of the joke.
No.
When you're telling a
No,
story.
even though like because we're all experiencing it together, like the Kalamazoo thing. Like we are 20 minutes into this long road trip, going at a snail's pace, but like we're all in it together, and that's the spin you kind of give it, and it feels fun to remember.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to say drama.
Great.
Love it.
George, do you want to ask a question or do you want to answer mine?
I will answer it, and I will say drama. I think that I have a good memory, and I enjoy remembering things, but I'm not as confident of a storyteller. So I think that's the part that's hard for me. But I do really enjoy remembering things. I have a lot of like really good things that I can bask in, just experiences or video games or movies. And,
Specific to vacations too?
vacations, family vacations, I don't look back on fondly. I'm gonna be honest. Like those are, I remember fondly, especially like the ski trip. Like that was fun.
So what are
And
some
it's-
vacations that you don't remember fondly?
Which ones were our parents at? Which ones? No, I'm kidding. It's all the vacations that were just our siblings. Those are the good vacations.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, like that ski trip. It was my first time as a young kid being invited to the ski trip. That I didn't have money to pay for this trip, but I got to get money from mom, and it was just along for the ride for this like
that was great.
trip with like adults. It felt like, even though you were like maybe early high school.
Yeah. I was dating Maddie because
Okay.
I think she was bummed that I didn't invite her.
How
okay.
old? Yeah, how old were you? I'm trying to remember.
I don't know, probably like 6th or 7th grade, maybe 8th, in that range. Enough to remember it well and know that like I felt like I kind of needed to walk. I don't know, just like tread lightly because I was so honored to be involved.
You
in
didn't
this
want to
thing.
ruin it.
I didn't want to ruin it. I felt like I was on a tight leash, even though you guys didn't make me feel that way, but I just felt that way.
That's funny.
Do you have an answer? Trauma, drama?
I think currently my current experience with vacations and memories is drama. Is like I love vacations. I love experiencing things, and I love the memories. And I have a very positive relationship to how I currently go on vacations. If I look back in the past, specific about memories, I think I didn't care to make memories. Like one of the things in Kalamazoo that Adam and I did, we watched an entire season of Glee.
I remember this.
We didn't care to make memories. We were watching TV for hours at a time. Like I think I was trying to, honestly, it's probably disassociating. Where I was like, I don't want to be experiencing this with everybody.
Well, and we're calling it a vacation, but
Yeah, it was
a new manna event.
It was an event. We were working.
It's not like we're frolicking on the beach.
Right.
Right.
With like deadlines.
Yeah, we
The
had,
faster you worked, the more celebrated you were.
and the more people you saved from starvation.
God damn it.
Yeah. So that's true. But I think, when I was a kid, memories on family events were, I was usually trying to get away from experiencing things.
Yeah.
Which I think I would say was trauma. But currently now, like I think of one great one, like going to California with you, Teddy, and the boys, was amazing. And I was like, I felt like I was there the whole time.
Yeah.
And I was really like actively trying to make memories. And I was even like, Maddie and I would have conversations. Like, I want to make sure that I spend a good amount of time with the boys so that like, I don't know. And I treasure the memories that I made. Just because it's like, I don't get to spend as much time with them, and now I like know them so much better. I go over there and they like recognize me and they know me, and we have like inside jokes, and I don't know, it's the memories I made because I was actively participating and present and intentional about making the memories I wanted to make with the people I wanted to make them with. I think I think I'm happy with my current relationship to making memories on vacation.
So, okay, we're towards the end. And the last kind of question or topic I would love to talk about is I feel like we've been talking about creating nostalgia a lot and how we create it and remember it. How do we feel about nostalgia when we look back on the past or think about nostalgia now? When you're feeling nostalgic for something, how does that make you feel? Are you longing for something that is in the past? Like, are you sad about your present, so you're longing for something? Are you in a positive state when you feel nostalgic? What does that feel like to feel nostalgic? Also, I looked up nostalgia, and it's a noun. I don't know if it can be an adjective, I guess that'd be an adverb. Like, how do you feel?
Nostalgic? No, it's nostalgic.
That's a word.
Yeah.
So yeah,
It's a complex emotion.
yeah.
So, yeah.
It's also really tied to your experience at that time. Like if you had a good childhood, your nostalgia is probably typically tends to be positive.
Right.
I guess the direction I was taking that was a time when I feel most nostalgic is when I'm on my own. And I look back at times when I'm with people and I'm like, okay, then I text someone. I'm like, hey, you want to hang out when you got whenever. So a lot of my nostalgic moments are when I'm alone, maybe a little lonely, but just kind of like.
Do you mean presently when you feel most nostalgic?
Yeah.
Okay, I see.
It's like maybe on a car drive when I hear a song or I'm looking out the window and I'm just like reminiscing. Often, not all the time, often it's like kind of a longing. Like I'm a little lonely and want to be in a social environment or whatever that is. So that's how it like manifests for me a lot is kind of through loneliness. But that's kind of the negative side. There are also positive sides to it too.
I think it's a mixed bag. Like, because I love talking about memories and stuff, but then there's like those people that just can't get out of high school or whatever, where you're like, don't you have like anything else? Like, they just can't. First of all, you're like, I don't think you're remembering everything correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then second, it's like, yeah, but there's like, surely you have stuff that's happened since then. Like, there's almost a nostalgia where it just becomes like a longing for the past, sort of, in a way that just like you can't. Because I was wondering about this on the drive over. I was like, was Trump's campaign like manipulating nostalgia?
Oh my
like,
gosh.
Make America great again?
Yeah.
They quote that in the podcast. It's
Do
like,
they really?
Yeah.
I didn't get to that part.
Well, yeah, it's like they literally are talking about the darker side of nostalgia, and it's exactly what you're saying. The like, let's make America great again, capitalizing on all of the boomers who are like, America used to be
was
great.
better when black people didn't have as many rights. Or when,
Right.
when gay people couldn't get married. I like that America better.
Right. Like, that's a very specific. I think if you want to like take, like, what do you mean by that phrase? But yeah, because I was thinking about that on the way over. I was like, was that just a manipulation of nostalgia? So.
Yes.
I really like that. Yeah, I that's a really insightful thought.
Yeah. Or like, I mean, I do think parents do it too sometimes, where like they just want, and I'm like, yeah, but like your kids aren't going to come over here for Christmas, like, till they're 50 or whatever. Or like, it was good while it happened.
But
and then just appreciate it. Yeah. Don't kind of fetishize it, I guess.
Yeah.
That's a good term.
And dangle it in front of people.
Or use it as like, I just feel like, those used to be the good old, and like, I don't, so that's, I guess does that answer your question?
Yeah.
I'm trying to,
No, that's really interesting. I remember one of our, like, I don't know if I want to name drop, so I'll just say one of our friends, but they were talking, like, someone asked them what their favorite decade was, and it's like someone who's a little older, I think like 60 plus. And someone had asked, so what was your like favorite decade of your life? and they had said it was like when they had kids, right? It was like that early. Do you not remember this?
I don't know
It's
who you're
someone
talking
we
about.
know.
Okay, someone we know.
Jack doesn't journal.
And I've really thought about that a lot because I even asked my girlfriend, and she'd said her mom kind of talks about life similarly. It was like when the kids were in the house and all their kids were
Yeah.
young, and how I take it is impressionable and like controllable when your
Yeah.
kids are young, and it's all on your terms, but you still get to bask in all the good.
Right.
You get all the rewards.
Uh-huh.
It's still hard to raise kids, of course. But I think a lot of people will say that era of their life is the best, which is just really interesting.
Interesting. Yeah.
'Cause it's hard for me to not say my 20s are going to be my best decade.
Really?
I don't know how I can't. Like my early 20s have been really great. My late 10s, my 10s were just anxious and scary.
Yeah.
And like, my early 20s are kind of
in
that
the
way.
3 decades, this has been the best.
Right. Of the 3.
Yeah. I think that does make sense. I also agree with you that like the looking back and thinking the time when you'd had little kids who like life was easier, quote unquote easier. I think it's just because you're only remembering the times that were easy. I think when I think about it, I like the trajectory of my life currently. I think I'm doing a lot of like work, and I'm seeing the payoff of that work where my life is like actively getting better. I'm having better conversations with my wife. I'm like having better life circumstances. I'm joining things that are fun for me, that are stretching me, and I'm less anxious about things. So it's like I only see a progress in where my life is going. So I'm like, this is either going to be cliche or stupid, but I'm like nostalgic for the future, for like what I think I'm capable of and where I think I'm capable of being.
Yeah.
Where when I look towards the past, a lot of, and this is, I've talked, it's only right for me to talk about how shitty I felt as a kid all the time. But growing up was bad for me, was hard. I felt bad all the time. And now when I think about it, when I am nostalgic, quote unquote nostalgic, it's because I'm remembering how bad I felt in those moments. So like, I'll even have like songs that'll pop in my head, like Secondhand Serenade song that'll hit me. And I'm like, yeah, that song. And then I think about what I was doing when I was listening to that song and making those memories. I was sad as hell, crying to myself on the mower, just jamming that song.
Oh my gosh, I remember you on the mower
I was having
with a lollipop.
conniption. Yeah.
Like I felt like you had a lollipop and you just singing to yourself while you on that huge the riding mower.
Oh, that was so dope.
I mean, I would turn on Pandora Secondhand Serenade radio, and they would just cue up their saddest songs just so that I could cry on the mower. And so, like, I feel nostalgic. Or like Owl City, they have a song, Vanilla Twilight, that was me and my 7th grade girlfriend's song. And now I hear that song and I think of her and I think of 7th grade, but I also think of like, God, I was so terrified to like talk to her. And she was my girlfriend. I was terrified to tell anyone about her because I was scared of myself and I was scared of her and I was scared of my mom. And like, so I wish I could connect. And I think I will be able to once I have a better relationship with my childhood self, where currently now I have a pretty like, I'm a little bit ashamed of my childhood self still. So I think at some point, once I drop that shame and I think back, I'll have a little more happiness and think like, oh, cute little 7th grade Jack and Vanilla Twilight and singing that song in his little like busted earbuds. Like that's fun. That's a fun memory that I wish I had. But right now it's a sad memory that I felt lonely. But at some point, I don't think I'll feel that way. But my life just keeps getting better the more I'm working on it. So it's like, I don't know, when I feel nostalgic, it's typically because I'm in my feelings or I want to be in my feelings. But I do get really excited and amped for the future and currently in these moments, like a conversation I just had with Maddie a couple of days ago that I was just like psyched about. It was super major progress, something that I've had a really hard time talking about, that we just like, we talked and we chatted and it was fun and it was good and we were laughing and there was no anxiety about it. I'm going to be nostalgic for that conversation. You know, I feel that right now that like, wow, I'm making memories now that I know and can see that I'm going to have a good time remembering. Which I think then hopefully I can retroactively look back and be like, actually, I did have a good time doing that. Or at least I can find some good things about growing up that maybe I don't have to feel as bummed about all the time.
I don't think that's out of the norm, though, for a lot of people to not want to remember their childhood.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't think you're alone in that.
Ellie, do you have any other thoughts?
I mean, this has been a delightful conversation. I could talk about this stuff forever.
Yeah.
I mean, it is interesting, though, because, yeah, I do think about the weird thing. One of the weird things that Ted and I talk about all the time with kids is, like, I think there is a fear of forgetting things because they're changing so fast.
I wonder if that's a parenthood thing. Is
Yeah.
it because you see your kids like growing up so fast?
Yeah, and they'll do something. I remember someone told me this, and it's kind of haunted me, but they were like, one day you like pick up your kid, and it's the last time you do it, and you don't know
Oh my
you're gonna
God.
do it.
That's a terrifying
Oh my
thing.
God.
But it kind of happened with Ford because he was in a crib, and then he got sick, and like then we went on vacation, and we made the transition to a big boy bed. Him and Lewis got a bunk bed. And I was like, I don't remember the last time I put him in the crib. Like, I don't remember.
That moment.
I don't
yeah.
remember. And for me, that's a good thing, actually, because otherwise I would just walk around crying all the time.
Yeah.
Like, oh, it's over. Because they're constantly reaching new milestones. But I think, yeah, it's like a weird. I do feel more inclined to be present. And I feel like I have a friend who's like always on Instagram with her kids, and she's like, because it makes such good memories, and like, I don't want to forget anything. I'm like, first of all, no one wants to like scroll through your feed. Like, you think your kids want to like, because that was the other thing about my grandparents is they had boxes of pictures.
Yeah.
And just like, both of them had passed away. My uncle passed away, but like, I just remember anytime anyone like died or when the family got together, we would just look through pictures and tell stories. And so I think, because like I was talking to you and Maddie about this, Jack, we got one of the boys' Christmas gifts was a picture book of our trip to California, because I was like, I don't feel like we have enough pictures. And like, I don't know, it's just weird. Lewis is making memories, and so it's weird to watch him remember things. And I guess it's also weird because I'm like, I'll do things that I think will be formative for him that he probably won't remember. And like, probably the ways I'll screw him up, I'll be like, I have no memory.
I didn't do. Yeah. Yeah.
Or like, I didn't know
Has
you were
that
listening.
come up yet? Where he said like, you said this, and you're like, oh, I sorry about that.
I'm sure it has. Like, and it's weird too, because like you'll tell them something. Like, we need to be like, mom and dad make mistakes all the time. Don't be hard on yourself when you make a mistake. And they hear that, but then they watch you spill something and go like, fuck. And so like that has more of an impression than you being like, be
Yeah.
gentle with yourself.
Yeah.
So they're like the things they internalize. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
sort of just surrendering to like, I hope they do. Like, I hope I'm doing a good enough job and that I'm validating the parts that need to be validated. And
Yeah.
I'll pay for their therapy when they need it someday. Because it's like, it's probably inevitable. But yeah, I could talk about this all the time. And I have really good memories of both of you when you're younger, which is a cool thing for a youngest child to have. I feel like I had a quasi older sister experience.
Because when you're talking about pictures, I was like, I don't really love looking at old pictures.
Yeah, I don't really
They make
have-
me cringe.
Yeah. I
But-
don't have a joy for that either.
Yeah, but like hearing old stories, I'm like, I can hear about,
Yeah.
like even the poop sauce story. I'm like,
Yeah.
those that are like me, I remember that one Christmas, you guys got me a onesie, and I felt a little too old to be wearing a onesie, but
That was
I
amazing.
I
Yeah.
felt confident enough to play into it a little bit, like wear it and just like, this is a fun thing we're doing. And like, so just like things like that.
Well,
like
and Millie got me a onesie, which I also felt too old to be wearing, but I wore it. You and I both had to wear onesies that night. Yeah.
That was so good.
So yeah, reminiscing on stories of my childhood is much more
Yeah,
enjoyable
as long as
than
I don't
looking
have to
at
remember
pictures.
what I looked like when I was
Right.
in seventh grade. On that note, let's call this over.
Well, thank you
Yeah.
for joining us, Ellie.
This has been so fun.
I
Good.
will remember this very fondly.
Yes.
So
I
thank
think I
you.
will too. Yeah. Thank you all for listening. Thank you, Ellie, for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
We'll try to have a few other guests. And Ellie, maybe we'll have you on for Memories Part 2.
Yeah. Or inevitably, when you talk about movie trailers that you
Yes.
love, I would
Yes.
love to go down
Okay,
that rabbit
let's do
hole.
that. We'll do that. That'll be episode 35.
Okay.
and we'll let
I
you
know it's a
when we're
ways
on.
out.
Yeah.
You'll probably be scraping the barrel a bit, but
Yeah, it'll come. It'll
Okay,
come. We'll,
okay.
we'll call you.
okay.
For
Great.
sure. All right. Thanks for listening, everyone.
And we'll see you on the next one.
Nailed it.